Tom and his wife had made friends with an older lady in their community, and she had a very old Seth Thomas Mantle clock, and it had a broken gear. Two of the teeth were broken off of the winding gear, so the clock was no longer able to run. So Tom agreed to take the clock and see if he could repair it. He has, a lot of the clockmaker's tools that you need. He recently retired. He's a double E by training, but for many years, since he was in high school, he's also had a side business doing clock repair, but he doesn't have the equipment in his shop to cut gear teeth. So he asked me if I would see if I could make a new gear or repair the teeth on this one. After doing a little web research, I found that a common way to do this type of repair, at least on larger gears, is to cut a little dovetail in there and make a brass repair plug to fit in the dovetail, and then cut some new teeth using a jeweler's saw and files. I don't have a way to cut a dovetail that small, so I decided just to use a rectangular plug and set it in deeply enough that it will hopefully be strong enough to stay in place under the stress of winding the clock. I used the DeltaCAD drawing software to help me get all the dimensions correct to make sure it was going to work, and here's what we ended up with. But this circle here represents the gear, and this inner circle represents where the teeth start, so the teeth actually are in this region between the two circles. This gray area here is the repair plug that will be go in here. We'll have two more teeth cut into it to match up with the other teeth. So the overall dimension here, the gear itself is just under 16 millimeters in diameter, and the patch plug that I'm going to make is going to be 3 by 4 by 5.2. And so over here, this shows the edge on view. This is the patch in place in the center of the gear. And this shows the patch looking from the end view. So it's 3 millimeters wide, same as the gear, and then it extends up 5.2 millimeters, and then I'll cut the teeth down in this region here. Here's the setup on the mini mill. I've got the head down very low, as you can see, because I'm using a very small 4 millimeter carbide end mill. And I have recently added these LED gooseneck lamps to the mini mill. I tried them about a year ago on my large 12-inch lathe, and I liked them so well I added them to my SX4 mill, and then more recently on the mini mill. So I've got two different varieties here, but you can find them on Amazon for about $15. They have a little transformer and plug into the wall, so you don't have to be constantly worrying about batteries. Got my phenolic table covers in place here, and if you're interested in them, I have another video on them that shows how I made them. Now, this aluminum block here is a spindle lock that I use when changing tools. I just insert this pin and rotate the spindle until it locks with the pin, and then I can use my two hands to hold the end mill and tighten the drawbar. It's typical when you use ordinary round stock rather than, say, drill rod, the dimensions are usually slightly larger than nominal. So this is nominally 1/4 inch brass rod, but if I measure it, it's actually about 0.252 inches in diameter. So when I made my drawing the first time, I used 0.250 as the dimension in the drawing, and of course that threw things off a little bit, only by 1/1000th of an inch or so. I decided to eliminate that variable of the stock diameter, because it might be different for different pieces that I pull out of the drawer, that I would reference the cut from the center of the work rather than from the edge of the work. So I'm ready to find the edges now, and of course the typical way you would do that would be to use an edge finder or a wiggler, but in this case I'm going to use the end mill itself to simulate an edge finder. So let's go ahead and do that. If you're real careful, you can advance it. Okay, right there I can feel a little bit of vibration through the Y-axis hand wheel, and I can actually hear some vibration there. So I know I'm right on that edge. So I'm going to zero my Y-axis DRO. Okay, I can hear it pulsing a little bit. So I'll turn that off. My DRO is reading 10.36. So I'll move out to the end here, and I'll move in by half of that, which will be 5.18. And when my DRO reads 5.18, I'll set that to 0. There it is, and that's now going to be my center point. The center of the end mill should now correspond exactly to the center of the workpiece. Now I've offset the end mill by 2 millimeters, and then I zeroed the DRO once again to compensate for the diameter of the end mill, which is 4 millimeters. Now I can advance the edge of the work into the end mill until the DRO reads 1.50, and then that will give me the correct dimension on the work. Then I'll flip the collet block over 180 degrees and repeat that operation, but on the same side. I prefer to cut in towards the collet block, so I want to cut on the back side of the workpiece. I'm reading 1.94 on the Y-axis DRO, and now I'm at 1.50. Now I'm going to flip the collet block over. .85. And go to 1.65. And then 1.50. Going to move it over so I can take a micrometer measurement. One thing I like about using the collet block is you can take the work out and measure it out here where it's easy to get to, and then replace the block back in the vise repeatedly without losing your reference distance to the cutting tool. Then when I'm ready to cut the other two edges, I can just flip it over by 90 degrees, and I'm guaranteed that the four sides will be perpendicular to each other. Let's get the micrometer here, see where we ended up. 3.006 it looks like. That looks pretty good, close enough. Okay, now I'll turn the collet block over 90 degrees and we'll mill these other two sides. Since I've already compensated for the diameter of the end mill, we can go directly by this number 2.60. So we'll be measuring effectively 2.60 from the center, but we'll be coming in from the outside edge and counting down till we get to 2.60. This will be a shallow cut, so I'll do it in one pass. Now we'll flip it over and do the other side. Next we have to cut this off to length, and I'll use a slitting saw for that operation. I'm going to use this slitting saw, and this is from Harbor Freight. It's sold for a little cutoff saw that they sell, and it is part number 42805. These come in a 3-pack for about $10 as of July 2021. I'll be holding the saw in this shop-made arbor. This has a shaft made from 1/2 inch drill rod, and then I made this little clamping arrangement here that is designed to be very low profile. There are situations where I need to cut very close to the vise jaws when I'm working with small parts. I'm going to touch off the bottom edge of the saw to the top of the work, And I'm going to do that pretty close to the center near the spindle so that there's not much flex of the blade. I'll zero the y-axis DRO, and then we'll move over so we can clear the edge of it. Then I'm going to come down about 1/2 millimeter, the thickness of the saw blade. Now I'll zero the DRO, and then I'll move down by the length of the part that I want, which is going to be 5.2 millimeters. I'm running the saw blade at about 300 RPM. Now I want to take this little piece that we cut off and put it in the vise on a parallel so I can trim off that end. In this case, the workpiece is a little narrower than the parallel, so I can't grip it. Now, one way to solve this problem is to use so-called wavy parallels, and they are pretty much what their name suggests. But they're useful for jobs like this where you have a very thin workpiece because they'll squeeze down in the vise. So that's one solution to the problem, but if you're new to machining, chances are good that you haven't yet gotten around to buying a set of wavy parallels, because they're a specialty item that doesn't get used very often. So you can make your own parallels, and I frequently do that for jobs like this where my standard stock parallels are too big or not tall enough or too tall or whatever the situation is. Here's a bunch of thin shop-made parallels I've made over a period of years, and I just use aluminum scrap, and you can see the thickness ranges from about 0.038 inches, 0.079, these two are probably the same, about 0.080. So the height typically is not, doesn't matter unless you're making them in pairs, and even then the height doesn't matter as long as both are the same. So you can just make these on the mill by clamping them in the vise and milling them and flipping them over and milling it again so that it's parallel. Got our workpiece in place in the vise now, and I've mounted a 5 millimeter carbide end mill in a collet, and I'm going to just touch off to the top of the workpiece. Then I'll zero out my z-axis DRO. So I'm going to make an initial cut just to get a flat top on here. So here's the end I just milled, and it has a nice finish on it. So we're at 6.91, and we need to take it down to 5.20. So we need to cut it down by 1.71 millimeters, and I'm going to take it down about 1/2 millimeter at a time, and then about 0.21 for the last pass. That's 0.50. There's 1.0, 1.5, 1.71. Since I only have one gear, I need to be sure I get this right on the first attempt, so I made sort of a simulated gear, and made a test cut with the mill just to make sure I could get the job done. In terms of the thickness and the height, it looks pretty good. So let's do our second test and see how that looks. So the plan is to cut down 1 millimeter at a time to a total depth of 5.2 millimeters. The bottom of that cut is closer to the center than I had hoped or expected, although I should have been able to see that on the diagram. So I may want to make that a little shallower. When I was doing the drawings, I decided to make this slot fairly deep with the idea that I would get the maximum amount of strength and torque resistance so that that little plug would not be likely to break out of there. But looking at it now, I'm uncomfortable with that being so close to the shaft. So I'm going to revise the plan a little bit and only make that about 4.8 deep, I think, maybe even 4.5, and see how that looks.